So anyway, what I wanted to do was to go over some of the statistics. So you had 2 questions that you answered when you registered for the webinar. One, are you an advisor? And also, do you have the succession plan? So this morning when I checked the stats, we had 48 registrants. We now have 60. 33 of those 48 this morning are advisors, and 11 have succession plans. So we know that 33% of you have succession plans, and 67% are here to begin. So you've come to the right place. Let's get started. And I might say that that percentage is about what the industry average is. It's a little bit better, but you're attending a webinar to improve, so it's kind of like preaching to the choir. What we'd like to do today is cover 3 things. I want to introduce you to RIAmatch. We get to hear our panel and question them, our panel of national experts to discuss advisor succession planning and growth. Also, we'll give you a brief tour of the RIAmatch website. So, what is RIAmatch? RIAmatch is a website that offers financial advisors solutions for succession planning and growth. The website matches financial advisors with other financial advisors and RIAs who want to buy, sell, merge, or join practices. The advisors and the RIAs can search for free and pay to connect, anonymously and securely. Independently owned, RIAmatch's mission is to create an efficient market for advisors and RIAs to partner their practices. The site is agnostic as a custodial platform or whether a deal gets done. It's a pure approach designed to serve all advisors, regardless of your scale, your scope, or your experience. What I'd like to do first is introduce one of our panelists, Beverly Flaxington. Bev co-founded the Collaborative, and she's authored many books. 2 of them are Understanding Other People and Make the Shift. Bev and her company consult on many levels in the advisory world. I've been very fortunate to have Bev as a strategic coach for RIAmatch as we move from vision to reality. Others in her company have led the design of the RIAmatch site, so she comes highly recommended. When I flew from Washington, D.C., I met you in a hotel near Providence Airport that snowy afternoon in February of 2011, a long time ago. Bev, can you remember what were your thoughts of the first iteration of RIAmatch?
I think my first response, and I believe I said this to you, was what took so long for somebody to do this in the industry? My feeling was that it was such a unique opportunity for people to be able to stay anonymous, to be able to come in and learn information and see who else is out there and make connections. And I know one of the things that you and I talked about from that point on and has been integrated into the site is just the need for information, that there's just not a lot of information out there, and so that's probably why 70% of advisors aren't doing this yet. So I was really excited about the opportunity to participate because I think that this is something that the industry really needs. So I guess I'd turn a question back to you, though. I just remember how really important you felt being agnostic and anonymous and secure. Why were those things right from the very beginning? Why were those things so important to you?
Well, you're right. Being agnostic, being independent, I really felt that the advisors needed a place to come, put their toe in the water, look around, see who else in their area is buying or selling or just looking to start a succession plan or a contingency plan. Often what happens when you get a group of advisors in a room is that everyone's a buyer. Certainly when someone needs to sell, they're often quiet about it. They often haven't told their staff. They need to search. And so you pointed out earlier, Bev, about the education. We have a real commitment on the site to make sure that there's education, that we're giving the advisors the tools they need in order to make the right decision for them. That it's really important that the advisors and the RIAs know that there's not a right answer or a wrong answer. We're not being judgmental. We're giving them the tools to decide what's best for them. There's so many different avenues that are right, and there's so many different models of advisory firms that are out there.
And I guess that really leads me to what people are going to see here today. I mean, what is it that you believe differentiates RIAmatch? I mean, why is it a new offering? Why was it something that you were so excited to do and felt like was missing in the industry? I mean, how is it different, and what are people going to see on this webinar today?
Well, thanks. It's, and I have to confess to the group here that as my strategic consultant, Bev was always on be clear on how you differentiate. So it's really important that, that people know that it's a self-populated site. It's a self-populated database. So the advisors come if they're interested, and the RIAs come if they're ready to grow their practice or search for succession. That the advisors get to search for free and pay to connect. They fill out their profile and they get matched. All of that's for free. They only need to join off the basic program to upgrade when they're ready to send someone an email on our internal email system. I felt that it was really important to give the advisors, and I had said this earlier, the opportunity to have anonymity, the opportunity to look around quietly. We will never, ever sell the list of advisors' names. We will never give that out. This is a site for advisors and RIAs, and this will help them get to their goals. And what that really does is that puts RIAmatch, puts the power in the advisor's hands. There are great custodians, there are great broker-dealers. There's a lot of good, there are a lot of good companies that service the advisory world. But I felt that it was important that RIAmatch be independent, be agnostic, so that we really are providing a service to the advisors, regardless of what their path was. So we created the playing field, so that we're not calling the plays, and we don't benefit from them. Important to know too. But Beth, thank you for having being our strategic coach and continuing. Hopefully, you'll continue that role. As I said, our goal is to bring the advisors the most efficient tools and excellent information so that they can make the best decisions for the succession and growth of their practices. What I'd like to do now is introduce the rest of the panel. David DeVoe is with us. David is the founder and managing partner of DeVoe & Company. Previously, he served as managing director of strategic business development at Charles Schwab Advisory Services. In that role, he developed and led Schwab's transition planning platform, which provides comprehensive M&A and succession planning services to registered investment advisors. During that 8-year period, he provided strategic counsel to over 300 advisors. Dave, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you, Marianne, and good morning, everyone.
Corey Kupfer is with us. Corey is partner at Hamburger Law Firm and is also the chief strategist at Market Counsel. It's an affiliated business that does regulatory and compliance consulting for entrepreneurial investment advisor firms nationwide. It's a great, great tool to have. Corey was an entrepreneur from the age of 15. Corey, we're going to have to dig deep on that one. I want to learn more about that. He both understands and appreciates how business people think. Corey believes his role as a counselor is to foster business dealings by assessing and managing risk, not by restricting the options and opportunities of his clients. Corey, thank you for being here.
It's great to be here with you and everybody.
Waldemar Cole is Vice President of Practice Management and Consulting for Fidelity Institutional Wealth Services. Fidelity is a leading provider of custody and brokerage services and a unit of Fidelity Investments. In his role, Waldemar is responsible for helping institutional wealth service advisor clients drive more efficient business growth. Waldemar manages the practice management programs, consulting platforms, and third-party partnerships that serve clients in the area of business development, talent management, M&A, and succession planning. He regularly facilitates workshops and roundtables and study groups to help the advisors learn and act on the industry's best practices. Waldemar, thank you for being here.
Thanks so much.
Waldemar, can you hear me?
Yes, thanks so much.
Okay, great. I am so thrilled that I have such a tremendous panel to present to you today. These are national presenters. They understand the concepts and the challenges of succession planning and growing your practice. And all I can say is that it's phenomenal that they're participating with us. This is really indicative of the types of programs RIAmatch is dedicated to bringing to the advisor community. In the future, we'll have other webinars where we'll just feature a single panelist, and we'll go really deep in those cases. Today, we're going to go across the top of some topics. Our questions are going to be around the themes of what is the starting point for a succession plan? What are the right questions to ask? What has worked for those who have already got a plan in place? So those are the kinds of themes that we're gonna work around and talk about today. Dave, let's start with you. As an M&A specialist, how do you begin to put a succession plan in place?
Yeah, thank you, Marianne. I think succession planning is a complicated process. There's a lot of moving parts, a lot of pieces to it, and I think that could be part of the reason that we see such a low percentage of advisors that have a succession plan in place. Study after study yields that about 25% of advisors have that plan, as you noted before. So what I try to do is simplify the process. When I think about a succession plan, I break that process into 4 major components. The first is what I call planning and fundamentals. And the goal here is to create the right plan for that organization to go out and create that succession plan. Once you have that plan in place, you move to the second one, which is identifying that successor, prospecting, for lack of a better word, for that successor. And your goal there is to find the right match, the right fit to take over the role that you have in the organization. Once you complete that, it's time to move into the third stage, which is really structuring that succession plan. What are the economic pieces of it? What are the non-economic pieces of the deal structure? How do you value the firm? How do you really pull this succession plan into place? And then the fourth is, once you have that plan in place, all these ducks in a row, how do you go out and implement that? How do you coach the staff on decision making? How do you determine the best way to achieve the company's goals and objectives with this new succession plan in place? So starting with the first one, your question is, where do you begin? You begin with planning and fundamentals. And what you want to do in this stage is learn the basics of mergers and acquisitions. You want to create a plan for what you seek to achieve. And you want to think strategically about what you can achieve with your succession plan. So learning the basics, the goal here is to get smart quickly on some of the fundamentals of merger and acquisition building blocks. They all apply to succession planning. Valuation, how does deal structure work in the industry? What are the implications to human capital? What are the legal or tax implications? There's a number of different building blocks that you want to at least have a cursory knowledge of and understand the basics of. And that puts you in a position to start thinking through that plan. Again, this is a complicated process, and there's a lot of moving parts. So your ability to create a methodical plan to go out and achieve this is critical. And I encourage people to actually create a written plan. What are the activities and the milestones that you seek to achieve through the process? And then the third component of this is really thinking strategically, taking a step back and thinking strategically about what you seek to achieve in the succession plan.
Well, that raises a question for me, though. What do you mean by strategic?
Yeah, at Devoe & Company, we've created something that we call the strategic context, and we use this for any type of transaction, whether it's a merger, an acquisition, a succession plan. And the goal here is to have the principal or principals take a step back from the actual transaction they're contemplating and think through some critical strategic elements. What do they seek to achieve with their business? What are the business goals and objectives? Especially in a situation where you're bringing on a successor, taking an inventory of your skills and your capabilities, because that person who comes in as your successor, or those people, need to be able to replace those skills and capabilities. And also, really get in touch with your life priorities. And with succession planning in particular, I encourage people to take a hard look at their identity and what their life is going to be like after the succession occurs. Are they going to want to stop working on that given Friday? Or is it going to be better for them to slowly but methodically dial it back?
I feel like a lot of heads are nodding there.
Yeah. And once a principal or principals have gone through this process of thinking strategically on these elements, then they're in a position to go out, create that succession plan that makes the most sense, identify that candidate who's going to be the best fit, and potentially create some transformational change for their organization.
David, thank you. That's a great start to the building blocks. Baltimore, what's a question an advisor should ask themselves about their strategy when they look at it? What do you think?
Absolutely, and I would say, first of all, really appreciate David's insight. I would build on David's point about context and life priorities. In addition to the statistic that's already been quoted, the 25%, the awful 1/4 metric of those firms that have a plan in place.
Mm-hmm.
In addition to that, our benchmarking shows that 43% of advisors don't have any plans to ever stop or leave the business or transition out.
Right.
And that really raises an additional concern about the well-being of not just their clients, but the eventual monetizing of what they've built over so long. So when you think about what should they ask about their strategy, number one is, do they have a definition for strategy? And what we've seen in the business quite often is that strategy is aligned with more of the mechanics to transition. In other words, how will I do it? What will I sell the business for? At what time? When? In 10 years when I'm 65? And really, what they skip, and this is really, really important, again to the point of context or life priorities. What are they trying to accomplish? What's their vision? What are their goals? What are the reasons behind any type of plan that they put together? So what we do is what we really encourage in terms of reflection. You first have to ask yourself, what is it that you really want? What are your real objectives? Okay, and that takes some time to figure out. It takes real reflection and bouncing ideas off of trusted consultants, relationship manager, friends, family, and so on. Once you've accomplished that, you get a real idea of, okay, what does post-advisor life look like?
Right.
Then you ask yourself what's best for your clients and what's best for your team. So that's where I would start.
Because the thing is, if you don't know where you're going, you're never going to get there. So you really have to visualize what you're going to do. And I think that as an entrepreneur myself, I understand the concept of going out of your business feet first. Just you're going to die, with your boots on. I understand that, but we also intellectually know that we have to have a plan and we have to take the next step. So I think that there's so much good information out there. Baltimore, that's great insight. Bev, a quick thought for you. So I'm an advisor. I've got a firm. I've got staff. I'm thinking maybe of bringing someone in for succession plan. Do you have to kiss a lot of frogs?
So I think, I was thinking as David and Waldemar were talking, it's a little like any of us that are parents, and, you're never going to find the person that's good enough for your son or daughter. So the business is often like our child, like our baby, and as a small business owner, I would feel the same way. I do think, though, that just like, we do find those people in our business and our personal lives that are good partners for us, or people that we are able to work with. Culturally, we're a good fit. Behaviorally, we're a good fit. We've got a good communication style going. So I think, as much as we spend some time on self-reflection and we know ourselves and we know what really matters to us, and instead of just looking at, as we've been talking about, the financial aspects, the quantitative aspects, but more getting in touch with what do I care about, what do I want for this business, and matching that values piece, that cultural piece. I think if you go out and talk to people with that at the forefront, no, you're not going to have to kiss as many frogs because you've got much more clarity about what you're looking for.
Yeah, so where do you put that on the checklist, the culture checklist? We'll come back to that. That's a very good point. Corey, as an attorney who works with advisors in putting together their succession plans, what are the legal components of a plan? I know this is a very basic question, but can you just sort of walk us through what are the pieces, and where do the advisors begin legally?
Sure, and I'm going to actually steal my friend or pick up on my friend Dave DeVoe's fourth point structure, because it works really nicely with regard to how we tie it into the legal work that we do and the advice that we give. So when you're in the planning and preparation stage that Dave talked about first, some of the things you're going to want to do is take a look at your existing corporate structure. How is your firm managed, run, owned, et cetera? What are the current agreements? Do you have partners? You don't have partners? You're going to really want to look at that because you're going to want to set that up for the future. If you're hiring to succeed or if you're merging, that corporate structure is going to be important. You're also going to want to make sure that your regulatory house is in order, and that your other legal house is in order, the litigation, that kind of stuff. Buyers are going to be looking at that.
Right.
You're also going to want to take a look at the platform you have. How do you create value in that platform? Have you created a brand? Do you have that intellectual property protected, for example, through trademarks? So even in the prep stage, to be able to maximize value and also increase the chances of a deal happening, there's some due diligence and fundamental prep that you want to do legally that will put you in the best position to be successful in the deal. When we move to Dave's next stage of locating a successor, that can look, a few different ways, right? You could be, if you have somebody internally, that may be set already, and then you have somebody ready, but you might need to hire for an internal succession. So where we get involved in that is we'll do what we call onboarding work, where we'll do two aspects of it. First of all, we will evaluate if you find somebody that you want to hire, let's say, for example, out of a wirehouse or an IBD platform. We will help our clients look at getting that person out of where they are safely, without litigation, and to bring them over without violating any of the Reg SP, taking the wrong information, and running into trouble. And then we'll also work with the clients to do the deal on the incoming side. So that's another piece. Then, of course, we get to if you're doing a deal, for example, an M&A deal. Well, then there's obviously a lot of legal structuring work and implementation on Dave's next two stages with regard to whether it's buy-sell agreements, merger agreements, if you're doing a tuck-in, which means you're buying a small firm for the purposes of maybe their younger advisors who are taking over. There's obviously a lot of legal agreements around that. So at all of Dave's stages, there's significant legal work that needs to be tied in with somebody that really understands the industry and is going to give the proper, advice and coordinate with the other advisors.
Well, that's a very good point. That's a good overview of where to start. And it's, we can break that, you can break that down into pieces, and that helps sort of tackle it, piece by piece.
Sure.
I realize that most of us don't have the first succession plan in place, nevertheless the second. But I was just wondering, what would a plan B look like? Dave, should advisors have a plan B, sort of a backup succession plan?
Yeah, I think succession planning can take time and energy. And there's risk involved. Succession planning, a big chunk of it is risk mitigation. It's also creating a career path for folks. It's answering a question that clients are asking, whether they ask it to a principal's face or not. It's a variety of things, but part of it is risk mitigation. What I encourage people to do that don't have a succession plan is to do two things before they do a succession plan. One is go out and get insurance. If you're hit by the proverbial bus, at least your heirs will be taken care of, or you can structure it so your employees are in a position to have the finances to buy that company and run it. Once you have insurance in place, the next thing to do is put a buy-sell agreement in place. Find an organization that shares your investment philosophy, your client service philosophy. There could be other things as well, but for the immediate term, just those two major boxes, amongst others. Sign a buy-sell agreement so that if you are hit by that proverbial bus, your organization can be folded into theirs. Your employees can have a place that they land. Your clients will be taken care of. And at least you've mitigated a lot of risk associated with the worst case scenario. Then you're in a position to think more methodically about your succession plan. And you need to be prepared for your plans to go awry as well. You have those plan Bs in place, but it's not uncommon for someone to hire what they expect to be a successor, and then it doesn't work out. And a year and a half later, they're back to square one. So you should be prepared for those types of activities as well, or those situations.
Right, right. And actually, the first part, Dave, that you were talking about sounds like a contingency plan, getting hit by the proverbial bus, so getting that insurance and that buy-sell agreement in place. Corey, how easy is that to do? How important is that to do?
Well, absolutely. Listen, first of all, from a legal point of view, the SEC requires a business continuity plan as part of an advisor's fiduciary duty. So that includes things like what happens if there's a fire or a flood or, you know, that kind of stuff. But it also includes what's going to happen, especially if you're a solo advisor and you have nobody in your firm, no partner, no person who's another owner who's in a position, you know, who's also an advisor, who's in a position to handle your clients if something happens to you, even temporarily. That's a breach of your fiduciary duty. So to have at least a minimum plan in place, there's something called the limited power of attorney where you can, at a minimum, just give that, you know, sign that up with somebody who would be the person who would step in if you are temporarily unable to serve your clients, you know, for 3 months, 6 months, even a month. So that's the first step. That's absolutely crucial. And then, like Dave said, you know, to do a buy-sell agreement, if you do get hit by the proverbial bus, the SEC actually has, although they haven't said as clearly that it's a breach of fiduciary duty not to have a succession plan like that as they have a business continuity plan, they have indicated that they believe that it's part of the fiduciary duty. And listen, if we think about it, you know, our advisor clients, people in this industry do really care about their clients and their client relationships and doing the best. That's why they decided to become advisors and obligate themselves to a fiduciary duty as opposed to the lower standard that brokers have. So, you know, it's really a missing when they haven't at least done the minimum to make sure there's somebody available to step in. God forbid something should happen to them so that their clients are taken care of. And then, as Dave said, you know, there's obviously more complex and longer term and more important succession planning to do from there. But at a minimum, the limited power of attorney or a simple buy-sell agreement is absolutely crucial.
You know, and Corey, thank you. And what I want to say here is that we're going to have additional webinars, and we're going to have items in the store to help the advisors and the firms really tackle these topics step by step. There's an awful lot you can do to get ready when you go to begin to put these things in. So, Corey, thank you. That's great. I want to shift gears a little bit here. Baltimore, you've been involved with a lot of practices. So let's say I'm an advisor who's preparing to address my succession. How do I determine which path is right for me, internal or external? You know, I know that we all know that the most common path at this point is an internal succession, but how does one really decide?
All right, super question. We do, in fact, work with a lot of advisors. You know, we have 3,300 independent advisors on our platform, and really this topic is becoming more and more important. So definitely the right question to ask. You know, the truth is most advisors don't want to deal with this topic. So I just want to start with that. They don't want to go there. Either they're too young. In our discussions, we hear that like, well, succession is not something for me. I'm too young, or they're older and they don't want to deal with it, just like their clients don't want to deal with life insurance or estate planning. Right. So even just getting to this discussion to start is very difficult. You're right. Our research also shows that about 66% of advisors would prefer an internal transition plan. What we've been trying to do to address this is a creative way of helping bring out what advisors really care about. We have conducted a number of workshops across the country, I think 10 by the end of the year, and it really starts off with an envisioning exercise where they're imagining themselves 1 year after transitioning out of the business. So we force them to think about that, whether they have or not. They just have to create in their mind what it looks like. From there, we really move them through a series of creative exercises where they prioritize value statements that are important to them personally. We use a card game, we use different tabletop exercises, and it really brings them to a point where they identify one of 3 tracks, very specific succession tracks: internal transition, merge and stay involved, or sell and move on. Of course, it's not always that clear, but it helps them think about, what may fit and what definitely doesn't fit. And it really comes down to, what are their personal goals, desires, and what's their personality and fit. So, for example, to get more specific, someone who is considering internal transition. The key considerations there may include their confidence in the leadership skills of their team members. Do they have a passion for mentoring? Do they want to leave a personal legacy? Is the name of their firm, the culture, the investment philosophy, is that critical to them? And do they have a willingness and ability to finance the sale? That's important to think through that. Number two, the second track, let's take a look at merge and stay involved. What's important there is, do they really have a clear idea of the ideal partner firm? Is the advisor confident that the level of service that they're giving their clients could stay the same or maybe even improve with a merger? Would they thrive in a multi-owner setting? Are they willing to embrace changes to investment philosophy and culture? Those are all considerations. And then thirdly, and this is just, again, this is just some of these points. There's a lot more that goes into this, but what are some of the considerations for selling and moving on, just leaving the business entirely on a shorter time frame? Does the advisor have employees in key positions that will enhance the value of the business? Are they confident in high client retention to maintain the value of the business? Are their clients aware and prepared for the exit of the advisor? And a willingness for them to really give up the name of their company and brand. Those are all key things that we work through. We've found that if we can get to the core motivations and passions of the advisor, then they're willing to start the discussion, start really thinking about doing something about succession and putting it down in written form. And as you started off earlier, Marianne, you said, the idea of I'm either a buyer or a seller. Well, we really think that if you move away from that and you say, well, what are you trying to accomplish? What are your ultimate goals? All the rest will kind of sort itself out, and there won't be that dichotomy. So that's how we approach guiding to the right track.
And that's a very good point. That I think it opens up a window for advisors and advisory firms that it doesn't have to be so Boolean. I'm either a buyer or I'm a seller. I think that people need to realize that what does a merge look like? How can I take the next step and build out my firm in a way that enhances it, and it's not so buy or sell. So I think that's a great point. Thanks, Baltimore. I appreciate that. So let's see, Bev, how successful are people? So we talked about picking your path. And so I'm an advisor, and I'm working with an internal succession because I've got a younger advisor in the practice. They're engaged. But my behavioral style is really not mentor. How do I create success when really what my job do now is as mentor of this other advisor isn't really my natural behavioral style? How would one go about that?
So the first important thing would obviously be to set really clear goals for this person. I see a lot of situations where a person will bring somebody in, assume they're going to be a successor or they're going to take over a portion of the business, and not really give them clear guidance about what's expected of them. What does success look like? What are the deliverables that they need from them? So even if you're not the type of person who wants to sit and really coach someone day to day, you do have to start with being really clear. What does this look like at this stage, 6 months from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, and together set some expectations and get some agreement on that. And then it is crucial to be able to, at a minimum, give some feedback. What's working, what's not. If you don't feel you're the type of person that can mentor and you want to get another resource for your successor, that's perfectly a great path to go and can work really well. At the same time, though, this person, the chosen successor, does need to hear from you. What is going well? What do you need them to do differently? So that ongoing communication is really important. But having that guiding post, that goal that you're aiming towards together, you've got to get that really clear and keep checking back on that over time.
Yeah, and that's really important because I think that a lot of entrepreneurs are, they're people who are going to knock down the weeds. They're the people we want to be behind as they charge up the hill. And then when they've got to go into another role, I think that those are good guiding words and advice, because it's being clear where you're going and working with the advisor, reviewing your goals together would help. Dave, you have seen many successions and successful ones. What's your thought on internal versus external succession?
Yeah, I think it really boils down to the goals and the objectives of the principals, as well as the capabilities of the potential successor. One of the great things about this industry is most principals that I speak with, their bias is to have an internal succession occur. Sometimes there's blind spots at the beginning of a conversation. They'll tell me that their firm's worth, $5 or $10 million, and by the end of the conversation, they say they plan to do internal succession, and I'm trying to connect the dots on how one or even several of their employees could actually afford their firm. So that's one thing anyone contemplating succession should do this afternoon, is pencil out how much your firm might be worth, and then try to reconcile that with what your employees can pay. But there's a number of different categories to contemplate. So back to that strategic context that I've talked about, that Valdemar has focused on as well. Start with those goals and objectives. Figure out what the profile of your successor is. And that's not just the nuts and bolts of skill set, investment management, business development, relationship management, whatever it may be. That also includes their leadership qualities. Right. That also includes what I just alluded to, their ability to afford to buy the organization. And once you have clarity around what that successor looks like, then you're able to take a hard look at internal candidates and see if there's some potential good fits there. Maybe some coaching is needed, maybe not. And if appropriate, move outside and look for someone from the outside. Another scenario is using a transaction. You buy your successor. You sell into a larger organization. You merge with another party to achieve that succession. So I guess a key takeaway is I encourage people when they start this process to sort of check any thoughts that they may have had about it at the door, think strategically about what they seek to achieve, and then explore a whole variety of options that could best enable them not only to achieve that succession plan, but maybe even add incremental value to their organization.
That it's interesting that you say that, because that really sort of echoes the comments that Corey and Valdemar and Bev have said, is that you have to be open. You have to know where you want to go, but you have to be open to the possibility that it may not be your exact vision, but you will still get to the path may not be straight, but the goal is there. Now that's very helpful. And things that we'll circle back with on future webinars is financing the sale of your success or the sale of your practice. I think that's a very big one that is ripe for a learning opportunity. So Bev, as a team building specialist that you are, from a humanistic perspective, where does an advisor begin his succession dialogue with his staff? I mean, they've built up this practice. They walk into their office every day, and they are employing a number of people. And then they realize, my goodness, I have not only obligations to my clients and my own family, but I have obligation to these employees who are here every day servicing me and my clients. How do they begin that succession dialogue with their staff?
So this, of course, is a question that will have a lot of it depends, because it certainly does depend on the style of the advisor, the types of people they have working for them, how they want to get them involved in the process. But I think that employees, just like Dave mentioned, clients sometimes are asking the question, employees are asking the question. If there's a leader of a firm or some partners of the firm, they're wondering, well, what is going to happen, and where is this firm ultimately going? Do I have an opportunity to participate in some ownership? Is this firm going to be sold? So I think if you want to have your employees be a part of it, and I would always vote for that, because I think that the more employees understand where you're going, what the vision is, how you're going to get there, what role they play, the more enthusiasm and commitment and devotion they're going to have to the business. But you do have to have some clarity about where people are going to fit, what ideas you're thinking about, because it can create a lot of fear if you're not confident of the path you're going to go down, and you just start generally talking about succession without some sense of, what's going to happen to all of your employees that are listening to you. So once you start to get a little bit clear on what you're thinking about, what you think your steps might be, where they fit into the picture, then you do want to start bringing them in. But all along, you should be communicating your vision and where you hope to go, and having them really be a part of what you're trying to create and you're trying to accomplish. So that part starts at the beginning. The actual succession part should start when you have some sense of where you think it's going to go and what role they'll play in it.
Right, right. Then that takes away, that actually empowers, takes away the fear, and it empowers the staff at all levels of your staff, whether it's a financial planner or a junior advisor, as well as, as someone at the front desk. It empowers them that they know if they've got a vision and that's been communicated. And that's really a good point. Corey, from the legal landscape, how have you seen culture play out?
This is a great question. I love this question. I bring it up all the time, and it's so some of my colleagues in the industry might think this is a sacrilegious comment, but I say, listen, I could write. Me and my colleagues at my firm, I think, are very good lawyers, but we can write the best agreement in the world. We can do our legal due diligence. We can, cover people every way we can in agreement, and if there's not a cultural fit, that business partnership is not going to work. So unless you're selling and disappearing, which is, one of the three strategies that Voldemort talked about, but the least common, because usually, at least for a period of time, you need to stay on, because this is a relationship business. Bottom line is, if there's not a cultural fit, it's not going to work. I say to people, listen, we can draft a great agreement for you. It serves two very important purposes. Purpose number one is that by putting the agreement in writing and working with professionals to do that, you make sure that there's a true meeting of the minds. There's nothing left out. There's nothing where people say, oh, I thought we meant this, I thought we meant that. And you really get to a point where you see whether you should have a deal or whether there are items that you can't come to agreement on. The second point is that if something does go wrong, you pull out the agreement and you see who has rights and whether it's in litigation or otherwise. Clearly, that's not an ideal scenario. Most of the business relationship is in between those 2 points, the meeting of the minds and then pulling the agreement out if something goes wrong. And hopefully, if the culture's right and the fit's right, you never have to pull that agreement out. So I spend a lot of time with my clients talking about, have you spent time with this person? Whether it's somebody you're selling to or bringing in to take over, do you know their goals and visions? Not only investment philosophy, which is important, and leadership qualities, but their goals in life, what kind of people they are. How many times have you been to dinner with them? Have you met their family? What are they thinking? Those are so much more important to the success of a deal than honestly what I do, which is, important, but no matter how good a job I do on an agreement, if the culture doesn't fit, the deal's not going to work.
Well, I think that's a fair statement, and I think that sometimes, we have to have all of these pieces in place. And, you're very kind to point out, you can have the best legal agreement, but the culture has to align. Baltimore, what part does a firm's values play in a succession plan?
Yeah, I would say, the values and culture very, very similar. What's important to you will define the culture of your business. If it's an internal transition, then that's relatively easy because you know what the values of the firm are. The individual who is being transitioned to internally already has those values, and the culture stays the same. When it's merging or selling, it's critical. It's absolutely critical. If you want a successful transition, you must have matching values. I spoke to an advisor a little while ago who was very frustrated because he had met with 3 other advisors and none of them worked out. Going back to there are a lot of frogs you have to kiss, but honestly, it takes time to understand whether there is a sharing of the key values. One thing I recommend is really laying it all on the table in terms of what's important to you. Practicing the common consulting activity of, tell me more. Why is that important? Tell me more about how you work with clients. Why? Why is that important? Tell me about your staff. How have they developed over time? Really getting to some of those essentials. Client I spoke to the other day was calling for advice on how to compensate staff and how to involve potential equity in the business. Confused because there seem to be competing priorities. But if you listen closely enough, as I tried, you just tell it back and say, here's what I'm hearing. I'm hearing that the team model is very important to you. It's more important than your growth. Is that correct? It absolutely is. Well, then that's a core value of your business. So trying to get to that before you get to some of the mechanics, as I mentioned earlier, what's the value? When are we going to transition? How is it going to happen? It's so much more important.
It's very true. It's very true. And I think that sometimes in our own businesses, I think we're too close to the canvas, that we really do need someone who's a little bit further back to question and to sort of say, okay, now let's look at it this way, and then it comes into focus. It's definitely a forest through the trees type of a situation. And we have time for questions, and I do see where everybody typed in. It was me learning how the system here. We have people from Houston and Rockaway, New Jersey, Newport, Rhode Island, Omaha, Nebraska, Boston, all over. And if you want to type in a question, you can. I can see it now, so we can look at that. I feel like the information that's been shared today is just tremendous, and I'm really I'm so grateful for our panelists to give their time to us today. I just know that this is very helpful to a lot of advisors and a lot of advisory firms out there. I just want to remind you we will be posting these questions in our Ask the Panel section of the website. So we will go from there, and I'm going to see if I can figure out the scroll thing here to see if there's a question. Let me come down here. Okay, I think that we are okay. What I'd like to do now then is to take the last 10 minutes or so, 12 minutes, and show you around RIAmatch. So we're going to shift gears here and go that way. So you can see on your screen the home page of the site. And the top third of it addresses our first value proposition, which is matching. What our goal is to, as I had said earlier in the introduction, to give you the information that you need to make your decisions. The second section is right here in the center, and that's our knowledge and insights section. This is a digest of articles, book reviews, and blogs. You'll be able to go into each one of these 6 categories and look at articles that are headed, we head them under join a firm, form a firm. It's the articles written about managing your advisors. It would appear there from all of our industry journals and magazines and newspapers. So that's that piece. Then down here we have the store. We're going to stop. The store is in process. We still have to stock the shelves, but stay tuned and check back because this is where we're going to put actionable solutions for you. Many of our panelists are going to be featuring some solutions that they've created in the store. So this is going to be a great opportunity for you. So I want to take you through a bit of the public pages. Then I'll log in and show you the inside. So RIAmatch helps advisors and RIAs find each other. It's a database built by you, self-populated, where you search for free and pay to connect. We've talked already about that your anonymity is protected at all times. So what I did want to say is, well, how is it that my identity is revealed? The way it works is we have an internal email system. And so you're a profile number and the other guy's a profile number. And you email from one profile number to the next. And so when and if you're ready, you're the one who sends the email that says, this is who I am. Let's get together for lunch, or let's start talking a little bit more. We give you some tools to create efficiency. We have a match list. You've got a dashboard. We're really trying to give you as many tools as you can to work efficiently. The digest on the first page is really to help you tackle information overload. And the store, the RIAmatch store, is, as I said earlier, actionable solutions. Let's see, how does this work? The way it works is that you fill out a profile online. You tell us about yourself. You describe your objectives. What are you looking for? What are your goals? we have proprietary matching algorithms. And so then you can get matched by those objectives and goals that you're looking for. We also have a two-way matching system, and I'll tell you a little bit about that in a little while here. So in addition to telling us about yourself, what you're looking for, we match you. That's all for free, and you get to review your matches. If you upgrade to a premium, personal or premium plan, you get to communicate on that internal email system that I was telling you about. So let's see, how much does all this cost and how does it work? So we have the basic free profile, basic free plan, where you create your own profile. You get to view the shortened profile, the basic view of members. So you get a little bit of information, enough actually to determine maybe if it isn't a good fit for you, but maybe not so much to determine that it is. You can send indications of interest to other members. You can do this for free. So that's like winking or poking on another social site. You get to receive alerts when a profile matches your criteria. So that's, you'll only get emails from us if you have matches or messages or indications of interest. We'll send you that. You get to explore our knowledge and insight section, that digest, create and manage your own match list. We have a library too. Often when I'm reading, I find, oh, I want to come back to that article. I don't have time to read it. So in our knowledge and insight section, if you see that article, just click Save to My Library, and you can go back and read it when you're ready. Or you've read it and you want to, it's very helpful. Again, you keep that there. So that, and then the store is obviously available to everybody. You would upgrade when you want to communicate. And the way that works is that, and also to view enhanced profiles, the longer profile that I'll show you in a second. And so that's $29.95 a month. And you get 5 contacts each month, 5 new contacts each month, that you can email unlimited times. And so that grows every month. The premium is 10 people that you, or firms that you can email unlimited each month. If you find that you have one month that there's a spike, that you need more than your 5 or 10, you can buy a booster pack in the store. You don't have to change your plan. So that's sort of the basics of plans and pricing. So what I want to do is I actually want to go to, well, let me do FAQs, and then we'll log in. So we've talked about what RIAmatch is. Who does RIAmatch serve? It serves RIAs looking for a succession plan through adding an advisor to their practice or M&A. It's advisors looking to join an existing practice or firm. RIAs looking to sell their practice as their path to succession. RIAs looking to grow their firm through adding new advisors or M&A. It also works for breakaway brokers and hybrid reps looking to join an existing firm or form a new one. So we've talked about how it works, and we've talked a little bit about how it's different. So what I want to do is use our time remaining to log in and show you how it all works. So now we'll just sign in here, quick like a bunny. Okay, so once you've filled your profile in, or even if you've just registered, you come to your dashboard. At your dashboard, so this is your Pulse Center. We have the information. You can see your library, new articles that have been added, recommended insights, and also the store at a glance. That's in the center. Your right panel are your stats, what type of plan you have. You can edit, you can preview. Also your activity. Look, I've got 2 unread messages, 55 matches. That's awesome. No indications of interest yet, or I think I had a few, but I've clicked through them. So let me do this. What I want to do is I want to take you to the profile as if you were going to fill it out. Now, what is your experience as a new user? So what we have done is we've divided the profile into 4 sections: personal, practice, your personal profile, your practice profile, your philosophy and culture, and your goals. And in each one of those sections, there are subgroups. If you look over to the right, you can see the subgroups. The personal profile, there's a current status, licenses and affiliations, education. I'm just going to go down the right here. Practice profile, there's organization and compensation, client composition, services, custodians, and technology. I want to take you just to that practice profile for a second. I want to be mindful of our time. So this is all very clicked down, right? Solo practitioner, ensemble, or I'm a solo practitioner that's new to the industry. We try to reach out to all people in our community. Again, we get scale and scope, your assets under management or your assets under advisement, how your firm, what generates your firm's revenues. That's all there, and it's quite self-explanatory. Over here we have, what custodians do you use? So there's your primary custodian, then you can have secondary custodians that you click off. What technologies? If you're looking to join a firm and they have some of the technology that you're already using, that's a huge gain. That's going to be a very good indicator on the ability, the ease of a transition. So when you fill this out, you've filled out your personal profile, sort of who you are, what licenses you have, and your affiliations. Are you fee only? All those kinds of things. The practice profile gives that scale and scope. One thing that our panelists talked about was philosophy and culture. We really need to have a match there, at least know what we're looking at. This tab is more qualitative than quantitative. You might have a lifestyle practice, or you might have an enterprise practice, but very likely you've got something in the middle. Maybe you're a lifestyle practice that's working toward being an enterprise practice. Do the advisors in your firm work individually or as a team? Are your operations decentralized or centralized? Your systems and procedures, are they minimal or extensive? And the asset growth plan, is it passive or strategic? Your advisor growth plan, well established or you don't have one? Who owns the clients? Do they belong to the advisors or do they belong to the firm? These are really important things, and not when you're looking at someone else's profile, it's not that this is going to answer the whole question. It's going to remind you to have the discussion. And if certainly if someone's at one extreme, you've got some very good information to work with. And you know all this without even knowing who the person or the firm is. So you've told us about yourself. You've told us about the scale and scope of your practice. You've told us about your philosophy and culture. So now, what is it that you want to do? Do you want to buy, sell, or merge? Maybe you want to do a combination of these things. Remember how we talked about it's not always so Boolean. It's not I'm a buyer or I'm a seller. Maybe I just need to start a succession plan. And I don't exactly know which way I need to go. Maybe I need to buy or add, or maybe I need to merge or sell. So you've got all kinds of options here. Where do you want to do this? You can add multiple regions and adjust it. Other factors that are important: what is the ideal assets under management that you'd like to join up with? We've got quite a range to pick from. Here's that scale. How many clients does your ideal match work with? What's the client, the advisor experience, right? And what form of compensation? So we go from 100% commission to 100% fee, combinations in between, salary and bonus. What is your sense of urgency? If all these things match, but you need to do it as soon as possible and someone else is in the next year or longer, you need to talk about that. What is your sense of urgency? So we've talked about what we want to do, where we want to do it, what's important to us, or what these other factors are. Now we get to say, how important are they? Is that location I put 25 miles within my zip code, is that critical, or could I open up an office 50 miles away, or could I merge with someone 50 miles away? Maybe that's not a deal breaker. Maybe that location piece isn't that important. Again, these are qualitative choices that allow you to make the comment based on location, assets under management, clients under advisement, years as an advisor, compensation structure, and sense of urgency. All of this is a lot of information, and it shows up in a profile like this so that you can see through and down all the information pretty quickly. Now we're coming close to our time, but I just do want to take you to the match list, because once you're matched, you get to see all the different people that you are matched with. and how they work. You can, close, far away. You can search by that. So there's lots of information and lots of functionality on the match list. What I'd like to do now is thank you very much for attending. I want to honor your time. We've been together for an hour. I want to thank the panelists very much for participating. Tremendous value in the knowledge and wisdom you have with your years of experience servicing our community. I also want to tell the advisors and the firms that we're going to have webinars regularly. Our next webinar is going to, we're going to have webinars with panelists. We're also just going to have tours of the webinar. I'd love for you to come back so you can learn some strategy in how you search for your match list. The advanced filter is a great tool that we can talk about next time. So our next webinar is going to be, and it's just a tour, a 30-minute tour, Wednesday, October 3rd at 2 p.m. Eastern. Thank you very much for joining our webinar, and I look forward to answering any questions. Feel free, go to the website and leave us questions there. You can hit the Give Feedback button right up there. Just click on that puppy, and you can give us a question, any information that you want. Thank you so much. It's been a wonderful time being with you. Feel free to answer any, give us any questions that you have. Thank you so much. We wish you continued success. Bye for now.